a juxtaposition of English and Urdu press in Pakistan and the likelihood of peace journalism. Maybe many of you know that this is a topic that I have been researching now for past several months. And this topic is very close to my heart. And we were earlier today we were talking about mainstream media and social media, and we were talking about the onslaught of social media. Let me tell you that I actually believe in the resilience of media for communication. And you can disagree with me, feel free to comment, reflect, criticize whatever you want to do. So when TV was invented and soon after TV started becoming popular, there were people who were talking about vanishing of radio. They were saying, okay, now this is the time radio will go away, but that never happened. That did not happen. Maybe the same thing happened with the invention of internet. There were people who were talking about the demise of TV. That too did not happen. I don't know. I think this media has this element of resilience, I think. But certainly, social media has challenged mainstream media in so many ways. And I believe social media is enormously good, but at the same time, it can also be enormously bad. And Dr. Altaf already talked about that at length in his presentation. So this reminds me of an incident. I would like to share it with you. When we had the same event with OsloMet's collaboration last time, is Shiraz here now? No, he left. So yeah, I shared my topic with Shiraz. He works with Hum TV nowadays. And his wife is also a journalist who works with an English newspaper, I believe. I don't know the name. So he was sharing his experience with me. He said that once he told his servant, his servant asked him, what do you do, sir? What's the nature of your job? And Shiraz told him that I am a journalist and I work with Hum TV and all that. And then he asked the same question about his wife. What does your wife do? So he told him that she works with an English newspaper. So his servant responded that I know what you do, but I am clueless about the nature of your job. So people, this actually tells us about the popularity of Urdu media and English media in the country. And now I will explain it further in my coming slides. So I'm going to develop a comparison of English and Urdu press in Pakistan. My focus is going to be only mainstream print media of country. All right. In this slide, I have written my premise, my conjecture. And in coming slides, I'll also talk about my starting point to engage into this kind of project. So my conjecture is that there is a contrast between the functioning of the two press, English press and Urdu press in Pakistan. The two press systems are linguistically different. They are linguistically different. They cater to different classes and hence exacerbate already existing inequalities in the country, already existing disparities in the country. So my argument is that consequently, this linguistic apartheid in Pakistan transforms into information apartheid. Let me explain the word apartheid. The word actually was used in South African context where we meant segregation, sort of discrimination that happens on the basis of race. However, here we see discrimination, segregation happening on the basis of language. All right. I have already talked about this caveat in the beginning of my presentation. I wanted to start with this right off the bat, that my focus is only Pakistan's mainstream print media. I am actually working on a research project. A few months ago, I won an HEC grant, Higher Education Commission grant, which is National Research Program for Universities and RPU, which is HEC's flagship grant. And its worth is, thank you, its worth is approximately 2.5 million, which means I have money for traveling, I have money to buy assets, I have money for focus group discussions, for interviews, and all the things that I want to do in my project. The project team includes myself, I am principal investigator, and 3 more faculty members from the same department. So today here I am presenting on a topic or a project which is still developing, and it's pretty much a work in progress. So we are currently at the initial stage where we are engaged in textual analysis, discourse analysis of the content that we find in print media. All right. Let me talk about linguistic landscape of the country. Pakistan is a multilingual country. Tariq Rahman, who is Pakistan's famous linguist, he has identified that country has almost 8 languages. I mean, there can be more. However, there are 8 widespread languages in the country. The most spoken language in the country is Punjabi, which is spoken by 48% people. And then comes Sindhi. And you can see, Urdu, although it's country's national language, it's spoken by, there are 8% people who are Urdu speaking, whose language is Urdu. However, Urdu is country's lingua franca. This data comes from CIA's The World Facebook, and they haven't mentioned English here, and I have highlighted this part where they have mentioned that English is country's official language, being the lingua franca of Pakistan's elite and used by most government ministers. So country's official language is English, although 1971 Constitution says that English will continue to be Pakistan's official language for next 15 years. And after 15 years, Urdu will replace English as country's official language. However, this is something that has not happened so far. So English is still country's official language. All right. Now this information, this data actually tells us the linguistic landscape of Pakistani print media. So 80% of publications in the country, 80% are in Urdu. And then English media is second distant. 8% of publications in Pakistan are in English. And then comes Sindhi. All right. Excuse me. All right, here I'm going to talk about a caveat related to print media in Pakistan. Although newspaper circulation figures have dropped significantly in recent years, this morning we're talking about that, print media still remain a vital source of news for millions. And this information is from Gallup, Pakistan. So here I would like to talk about my starting point for this project. What was my point of departure? Although I have shared this picture already in one of my presentations, I remember, especially when I was presenting for the same event last year. This picture bears repeating because this explains how I actually delved into this project. So I took this picture. This is, and I'm certainly not a good photographer. So this is the upper half of Nawai Waqt newspaper. This is the newspaper copy which was published on March the 23rd, 2020. The same year when COVID-19 happened, and soon after the onset of COVID-19. So, and you can notice that the masthead, Nawai Waqt, appears to be a little different. It is because it was published on 23rd March 2020. The year when Nawai Waqt was celebrating its 80th anniversary. So for that reason, they wanted to publish the newspaper with the same masthead that they used 80 years ago. Excuse me. All right. Well, if you look at the bottom of this picture, does this sound familiar? I'm sorry, it's not it's not much visible, but does this image sound familiar? Yeah, I remember, Umar, you were here with me when I presented the same image. Is your, yeah. Hmm. Awesome, yeah. So this Nawai Waqt published this image on March 20, on their copy, in their copy on March 23rd, 2020. This is front page image. So in image you can see a line, and the image was published with a caption which is down here. It says that Russian government has, a line can be seen roaming in the streets of Moscow. Russian government has released such 500 lines in the streets of Moscow to confine people to their homes, so that people just stay in their homes. So, and I remember when this image appeared in the newspaper, I was visiting my family in Jhang. And I call Nawai Waqt my family newspaper. My grandfather used to read it. My father has been reading this newspaper for several years. So my father brought this newspaper copy and he showed it to us. And then he said, see, this is what is happening in Moscow. And of course, this is an erroneous news. This is based on erroneous news, of course. So, and then this stirred up a debate in the family. My brothers were like, wow, so see, this is what Russian government is doing. Probably they should take the same measures in Pakistan, because you know us, Pakistanis. I mean, it's hard for us to practice social distancing and all that. They should probably do the same thing. Well, this was a wrong news story, wrong picture published by one of country's leading newspaper, Urdu newspaper. Well, now you may ask this question, well, did the newspaper publish a corrigendum? The answer is yes, no. Very next day, they published another news story. Now the wrong story comes on front page, and then sort of corrigendum goes to third page. And it was just this big, very small, barely noticeable, and nobody nowhere in the writing newspaper takes the responsibility or apologizes for the mistake. They said, well, the news story related to line was wrong, and it circulated on social media. So just this information. Well, this was my point of departure. This picture actually was my point of departure to begin working on this project. Although I started noticing differences when I was working on my PhD, my PhD dissertation. During my dissertation, I worked at the Library of Congress and Center for Research libraries in Chicago. And there, I mean, I was noticing differences, but I actually didn't think about studying this. So this image struck me, it caught my attention, and then I started making comparisons. And the more I'll compare, the more differences I'll find. So for example, and I found that usually reporting and wording in Urdu newspapers is sensational as compared to English newspapers. Let me tell you how. There was a news story about Prime Minister Modi in India, who decided a shutdown in his country after COVID-19 was at its peak. So the way Nawai Waqt presented it was, now just see the wording. Modi डरपोक निकला, कोरोना के डर से मुल्क बंद कर दिया. So Modi turns out to be a coward. He has decided to shut down his country because of COVID, something like that. Yeah, so like I said, the more I was reading, the more I was finding, I mean, there were more differences that I was noticing. All right. So this is a report which was published by IMS, International Media Support, in 2009. I have underlined these words on purpose. It says, media demographics reflect a multilinguistic, multi-ethnic, and stratified class society with a clear divide between Urdu and English media. Urdu media are mostly consumed by the rural population. The English media targets urban and the elite and is more liberal and professional in comparison. English print, radio, and television channels have far smaller audience than their Urdu counterparts, but have great leverage this particularly caught my attention. They have great leverage among opinion makers, politicians, the business community and the upper strata of society. Excuse me. All right. So we see media running in two languages, parallel to each other. They both cater to different classes. And to me, they sort of exacerbate already existing classism in the country. All right. The comparison of English and Urdu press. The English mainstream press appears to be audacious. They are bold. They are open to talk about, they are comparatively bold, especially when it comes to the criticism of Pakistan Army. Felicitous, they are very careful about their word choices, and professional, by which I mean they appear to conforming to standards. On the other hand, the Urdu mainstream press appears to be less professional, sensational, religious, and folkloristic. So now the question that comes in my mind is, do they both create the same view of the world? Well, that's a big question that I am trying to find out in my research project. I would also like to talk about main conjecture. When actually Dr. Altaf asked me to present at this very important occasion, I immediately thought about presenting my research project, because I thought, okay, what can be another great opportunity to share my research and to get feedback and pushback on an area that I have been studying for past several months now. So let me read this first and then I'll explain it. Given the situation of media censorship, one can assume that perpetual deterring circumstances and pressing requirements of increased readership may have led the Urdu newspaper to a clumsy approach. All right, how did I get here? Several years ago, I attended a talk by Huma Yusuf, who writes in Dawn, when she was speaking at Woodrow Wilson. And there she said that Urdu media in Pakistan has faced more censorship than English media. And along with that, she commented that even General Ziaul Haq's harsh regime knew that English media was not powerful enough to put public to streets. So this led me to this question that maybe perpetual deterring circumstances, and then we know that there is more readership for Urdu newspapers, and then pressing requirements of increased readership, maybe these may have been the reasons. Let me tell you that when I started my working on the comparison of English and Urdu media, I developed a paper, a draft that I sent for publication to a journal which Sage was publishing, and that was their expedited edition. So my editor, after they went over my draft, they sent it back to me, and my paper had an R&R status, which means revise and resubmit. They asked me to, they asked me to do some changes, and then they asked me to resubmit. I did. But then my editor wanted me to actually work more on this area. And of course, this is an area that requires a detailed empirical research, and that was an expedited edition. And I needed more time. So they declined the publication, which is very unusual. Usually they do, if they ask you to revise, usually they publish it. I'm hopeful that my paper will find a nice home soon. But about this argument that my editor actually wanted me to work on, this is an unexamined assumption, of course, and this needs a detailed empirical analysis, something that I will be doing in coming months, I believe. So like I said, in my research, I have funds, which means I can travel, I can meet journalists, I can interview them, I can even invite them for focus group discussions. So hopefully, I'll get to that stage where I can actually find the answer of this question. I have written English media makes me envious. And yes, Arifa Noor also once said this. In one of her publications, she wrote that she's envious of issues raised and discussed by English newspapers in Pakistan. My team and I, when we were working together on this project, actually Saqib is here, he's also part of this team. And Rachel was also part of this team. Salim is also, we all are working together. So we identified areas where we can actually find stark contrast between the functioning of the two press. The first one is role or portrayal of Pakistan Army. And then second topic was discussion on sensitive religious issues, especially blasphemy and that kind of stuff. And then gender equality as well. We have noticed that, I mean, while commenting upon issues like Aurat March and all that, sometimes Urdu newspapers would get a bit harsh. My colleague Adil Saab is sitting here. He also pointed out several Urdu publications that can be perfect cases in point for a comparison of English and Urdu press in Pakistan. Now, how can this situation be detrimental for peace journalism? We expect media to perform these following roles for us. We expect media to uplift the taste of masses. We also expect media to play an educational role for us where they actually show us the whole worldview. And my third point actually explains it already, that we expect media to present us a holistic picture on issues of national and international concerns. And also we expect media to do solution indicative reporting for us. I am absolutely not saying that these are the factors that are missing in Urdu journalism, but my argument here is that English media is one step ahead of Urdu media in all of these, for all of these concerns. Well, this is my last slide, and I am done. The likelihood of peace journalism in Pakistan, Johan Galtung, I'm sure this is correct Norwegian pronunciation. I love this man for his writings. He has written extensively peace journalism. I like him more for his work on structural imperialism. Those of you who know me, they know that I do critical theory and cultural studies. And in critical theory, you actually study inequalities, disparities, oppression, use and abuse of power. So I like Johan Galtung's work for structural imperialism. He has written extensively on imperialism as well. So he once wrote that journalism's role is not only to report on the world, but also to make key actors, these key actors, states, capital, people, transparent to each other. Something in which we see English media ahead of Urdu media. And then he further wrote that the role of peace journalism is to identify forces and counter-forces for and against peace and to make them their dialectic visible, creating outcomes that could be potential solutions. So I think, again, here I would say that we see, I mean, I have just shown you some examples, and as we are studying more, we keep finding that Urdu media comparatively appears to be sensational and less professional. However, English media appears to be more audacious and more professional, which means they keep, they conform to standards, to standardized journalism. So yeah, so I think in the absence of this, it's hard to imagine the practice of peace journalism. And now I thank you for your time and attention. I look forward to your comments, suggestions, criticism, and reflection on my work. Thank you. Go ahead, Musarat. You are a great friend. Thank you. You're here today.
Thank you. I've always admired you for your work and your research. And though you told me about this earlier, and I know that this is fantastic work and a very good idea, when I heard what you were saying, I think when you are talking about the corridors of power, and we are talking about the corridors of power when we're talking about language. And in Pakistan, though there is a very, very minimal presence of English when we see private school systems, or that's just 3%. So perhaps that's the same case where Urdu and English apartheid happens, because wherever the power resides, even though they are lower and in numbers, they have more influence. That's what I was thinking about. So do you think that's correct, or do you want to add to this?
I think this is absolutely correct. Through education, this inequality actually seeps into all walks of life. We live in a country where, unfortunately, we have problems with um, equal acquisition, equal English acquisition. You know, English medium is a loaded term. It's a loaded term in Pakistan. It's culturally loaded. When somebody says, well, my children go to English medium school, well, it reflects your socio-cultural background, doesn't it? So, yeah, I earlier quoted Tariq Rahman. He once beautifully said that in English, you can have, you can, in Pakistan, you have problems related to English acquisition, and only those people have access to the learning of this language who are either in power or who they have wealth. Also, another thing, we all remember, or we may have read or heard, Urduization period of Ziaul Haq. Well, I am a product of that system. I went to government schools in my childhood, and I'm an Urdu medium product. And I remember first time I was exposed to English language first time in grade 6, when I was a 6th grader. I read Punjab textbook boards, and at that time they would teach us A for apple and B for book. So, but the important thing is, even these elite schools, these private elite schools, and not only private, there are elite public schools as well in the country. They were insulated from Ziaul Haq's Urduization policy. There is a famous politician, I'll take your question in a minute. There's a famous politician who once wrote that the journal privately agreed to her to let her run the chains of her school in the country, English medium chains of school. The journal privately agreed to that. So yeah, it's a wonderful comment. It's sad. Yeah, thank you, Musarat. Noor? Yeah, go ahead, please.
Okay, so basically, I really look forward to your research because it's very interesting. Being a media academic, it's very important to know and to because when we got to know things, of course, by after that we are going to extend it to our students. So when it comes to journalism altogether, such researches are very important. Recently, we were talking about a conference which is going to be held in one of the private sector universities, and it is basically about Urdu journalism. And we were all actually discussing the fact that there are very less researchers which are basically talking about it. Urdu journalism as a whole, because most of the times we are more inclined towards English journalism, and because we think that this is the elite journalism. This was one of my point, and to appreciate your idea of, and I really look forward to your research, and I really hope that it got a slot somewhere really good so that it reached to the masses like us. And secondly, I just wanted to ask one question, which is about you just in one of your recommendations, it was written that we can improve the taste of masses. So how do you really see we can do that? Because I think it's not just for the journalism, practical journalism, but also for the media academician to know that how can we actually counter the argument of popular culture, that okay, this is how people are looking at it and this is how we are supposed to talk about it, but nobody actually till date is aware of the fact how this popular culture is being formulated. I mean, how can we improve the taste of the masses by the end of the day? Thank you.
Thank you for your question and your comments, Madiha. So, to respond to your first question or comment, I think you have talked about the importance of my conjecture, my main conjecture. And when I was saying that when I listened to Huma Yusuf's talk, where she was saying that in Pakistan, Urdu media has faced more criticism as compared to English media, this may be one of the reasons why they appear to be less professional as compared to their English counterparts. So let's see how things unfold. Actually, my research has 4 distinct stages. The first stage is based on textual analysis with a hermeneutic approach, and we are currently working on that stage. So in second stage, we'll move to interviews. First stage will help us identify the journalists whom we can interview. And after we are done with that stage, we'll move to the third stage, which is focus group discussions, FGDs. And from there, the fourth and final stage will be where we will integrate all of this into one whole and to transform it into publishable papers. So let's see how things unfold. This is a really, you know, pressing question for me as well. Like I said in the beginning that I am a critical theorist, and inequalities, they disturb me a lot. So let's see where we get. And to answer your second question, how media performs this role of uplifting the taste of masses. I can't remember the name of that writer who writes in Dawn. His name is Sharjeel something. I can't remember his second name. So once he wrote that, where are intellectuals? Something like that. I think that was the title of his essay that was published in Dawn. And there he commented that what we see in our talk shows, so they invite politicians from different parties and then they have them fight. And media today is after ratings. There is this cutthroat competition for ratings to compete against their rivals. And his question was that why don't they invite intellectuals, like academics, to take part in serious conversations? And I think that was a great article. So, yeah, again, let's see how things unfold as we proceed with our research. Thank you. Noor?
Ma'am, it's a huge respect for you, first of all, for addressing such an important issue. And when we talk about peace journalism, especially in Lahore, especially in Pakistan perspective, majority of the people speak Urdu and other native languages except English. Yes, English is an official language for all schools, and you have just mentioned that there's a disparity between the education system as well. So, I personally believe it's rather a comment than a question, because it was so much explained and comprehensive, your work, that I literally want to comment on it, because it's the need of the hour, and it's very, very important, basically, because I think English is a pressure. I mean, learning English, speaking good English, and being one of those who, raise his hand immediately and just answer the question. Why? Because they're confident in English. So I think that's the pressure that's, on students and on everybody now. And even agar aap dekhen to digital media mein bhi, e-newspapers and all, only people who have literacy to, and who have the resources and affordability, they can only be there and, read from there. So number one, that for peace journalism, something, journalism which is meant to create harmony and peace, and this can only be done when the population and the public will be given proper information about what their rights are, what their fundamental duties are, and how can they live. So for them, understanding, I think, is very, very important. So amazing work. I would really appreciate, and I'm really thankful. I'm really thankful to Allah that I could, listen to you, present. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much for your encouraging words. For my doctoral dissertation, I actually studied Orientalism. I studied Orientalism from a Pakistani standpoint. And what I did there was I studied English language supremacy in the country. Well, English enjoys the status of queen languages. I mean, the status of queen language when it comes to languages in Pakistan. Nobody can deny that fact. And again, I mean, this is related to the idea of power, use and abuse of power. I don't think if there is any language that is minor. I think all languages are beautiful. I am a proud Punjabi woman. And I think the idea here is related to the idea of power. English is powerful because it was the language of people who were in power. Let's say, huh? Yeah. So let's see if 100 years down the line, China becomes the next superpower. Maybe Chinese will be the next dominant language. So yeah, I came up with this idea of internal Orientalism. You see how we actually do this internal othering. And although my editor had a problem with that, I actually extracted a paper from my doctoral dissertation, and I was lucky to get it published with Routledge. So my editor had trouble with this. Well, why are you calling it internal Orientalism? Well, to me, it is internal Orientalism because it is actually the idea of segregation. If we can talk about internal Orientalism in terms of African Americans, in terms of Turkish Orientalism in Turkey, why can't we talk about this English language supremacy as internal Orientalism happening in our part of the world? So thank you for your encouraging words. Muazzam?
थैंक यू डॉक्टर साहबा. मैं चाहूँगा कि सवाल भी उर्दू में रखते हैं क्योंकि उर्दू सहाफ़त का जिक्र हो रहा है बहुत ज़्यादा. एक गुजारिश मेरी ये होगी कि जब आप इस तहकीक को देखें तो इसमें एक चीज़ मद्देनज़र रखनी चाहिए अगर आप मुनासिब समझें कि उर्दू अखबार को कुछ चैलेंजेस भी दरपेश हैं. अंग्रेज़ी प्रेस का उस तरह से आपस में मुकाबला नहीं है. अगर आज आप भी अहम अंग्रेज़ी अखबारात की फ़हरिस्त बनाना चाहें तो शायद 2 के बाद हमारे पास नंबर नहीं रहता. जबकि आप उर्दू अखबार को अगर आप देखें तो काउंटलेस नंबर आपके पास बहुत ज़्यादा. तो जब हम उर्दू न्यूज़ रूम में मुझे काम करने का कोई मौका मिला तो हम ये डिस्कस करते हैं एडिटर लेवल के सुबह क्या बेचना है. तो और दूसरा एक ये भी है कि जब सेंसेशनलिज्म की बात होती है उर्दू सहाफ़त के एतबार से जो कि दुरुस्त है, ज़्यादा इस्तेमाल की जाती है, उसकी शायद एक वजह यह है कि जो हमारा कारी है, जो हमारा रीडर है, वो शायद जाने अनजाने में एक ज़ुबान के चस्के के लिए भी इस अखबार को पढ़ता है, उसको मसाला दरकार है, कहीं और से मिल नहीं रहा. जबकि जो अंग्रेज़ी अखबार का रीडर है वो उसको किसी और पर्पज़ के लिए, किसी और मकसद के लिए, ज़्यादा इंफॉर्मेशन के लिए और बराह रास्त इंफॉर्मेशन के लिए पढ़ता है. तो मेरा ख्याल है जब आप इसको आगे अपनी तहकीक को आगे लेके चलेंगी तो यकीनन ये मसाइल भी आप सामने रखिएगा. थैंक यू वेरी मच.
आपकी सजेशन क्या थी? सॉरी मुझे
कि 2 चीज़ें हैं. एक तो उर्दू अखबार को एक बहुत ज़बरदस्त मुकाबला दरपेश है और उसको अपने सेंसेशनलिज्म के एतबार से भी अगर सुर्खी तेज़ नहीं होगी, हमारे यहाँ डिस्कस होता है अखबार के न्यूज़ रूम में कि कौन अच्छी सुर्खी निकालता है और वो जो अच्छी सुर्खी हेडलाइन अच्छी निकालने वाला है उसको बड़ी रिस्पेक्ट दी जाती है और ये बात मद्देनज़र नहीं रखी जाती कि ये ख़बर का असल मतन बरकरार रखती है या नहीं रखती. और एक तो ये है कि सेंसेशनलिज्म की रीज़न है उसका कारी, उसका रीडर उस तरह का है, कॉमन मैन की लैंग्वेज है. वो अखबार जो है वो उर्दू अखबार जो है वो एक आम रेडी वाला, एक आम बाबर की शॉप पे पढ़ा जाता है, वो बिज़नेस कॉरिडोर्स को उस तरह से टैकल नहीं करता. तो उसकी कुछ मजबूरियाँ हैं उस एतबार से, ये कहना चाह रहा हूँ.
Well, thank you. I'm glad you brought this up. It's a very good suggestion. हम डेफिनेटली इसको भी देखेंगे कि चैलेंजेस क्या फेस करने पड़ते हैं उर्दू जर्नलिज्म को, शायद उसकी वजह से भी एक ये प्रेसिंग रिक्वायरमेंट है उसकी के. जी सर.
किसी ने प्रेजेंट किया था उसमें इंग्लिश अखबार में उर्दू के वर्ड लिखे जाते हैं. डॉन में, दी न्यूज़ में.
Okay, I can hear her. It is a good suggestion. Wherever they want to emphasize something or. Mhm. हाँ. हाँ, exactly. हाँ. हाँ.
तो मेरा ख्याल है कि ये मिसिंग, मुझे ये लगा कि इस रिसर्च में अगर आप ये भी कर लें कि मेरे फादर इन लॉ जो हैं डॉन न्यूज़पेपर में सब कॉन्टिनेंट से डॉन के एम्प्लॉय थे और जब इंडिया से माइग्रेट करके यहाँ आए तो उन्होंने डॉन अखबार 2007 में मैं अपना एक असाइनमेंट लेकर उनके पास बैठी। मैंने शादी के बाद मास्टर किया जर्नलिज्म में। तो मैंने उनसे कहा कि मुझे ये समझ में नहीं आ रहा। तो उन्होंने कहा कि एक्चुअली मैंने अखबार पढ़ना छोड़ दिया है जब तुम लोगों ने लिखना शुरू किया है। उसकी वजह ये कि उसके अंदर स्पेलिंग एरर्स और उर्दू के लफ्ज़ इस्तेमाल हो रहे हैं और इस पे रिसर्च भी हुई है। आप इसको अगर चेक करें कि
This is the beauty of this event. I already kind of foresaw this, that people will give me wonderful suggestions. Thank you. My team and I will look into this. Thank you, ma'am.
Another
He
thing
also
that
has a question. I'm sorry, Sana. I'll come to you later. First, him.
Thank you. I wish to ask you, I wish to learn from you. You've used this phrase, clumsy approach. You've used the word
हाँ जी जी
clumsy approach, right? So why do you essentially think this would actually describe the approach taken by a newspaper? Because what occurs to me years ago, I thought, based on analysis by someone, that these English and Urdu newspaper are actually following a particular ideology. So now I worked in Urdu, they are more conservative, and the others are perhaps more progressive. So that too also sets their agenda. But in this particular instance that you say clumsy approach, will that be fine, or does it need more moderation?
yeah.
But my important question is, I have an impression that you are using multiple methods of analysis. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. For your second question, multiple methods, because we are working in the form of a team. So the project team has 4 members, actually. So each of us will be performing different tasks.
Because that will distort the findings subsequently. Because there will be different, each method
Yeah.
actually delineates different
Yeah.
approaches for coding.
Ji, ji.
So that would actually mean that when you synthesize the data,
Yeah.
there will be distortion.
Yeah, that can happen. That's a very good caveat. Thank you. You brought this up. Yeah, I was sort of mindful of that when I was developing the project. So we have just begun working on this. HEC, this is first time I'm working with HEC, and it's a very, I mean, HEC is very slow in the release of funds. And I think this is a very good caveat. We'll be more careful of that as we proceed with our research. And to respond to your first question, which was about clumsy approach, okay, again, I'm glad that you brought this up, because this is a word that my editor, like I said, when I was working for an article which was going for a journal in Sage, so that was a word, I actually wrote erroneous news reporting, and I was referring to the publication of the image that I just showed. So my editor changed it to clumsy. He suggested that maybe you should write this word instead, because this explains that newspaper actually like published a wrong image without checking the fact or something. So yeah, when I use the word clumsy, actually I was referring to that image. So, but you are saying that I should look for more terms. I think it's a good suggestion. I'll definitely look into this. Thank you. Anyone else? Oh, Sana.
someone raised your point that English supremacy, I guess what makes a language supreme is in which language the knowledge is being produced. So we are not producing new knowledge in Urdu. So एक तरफ हम ये देखते हैं कि there is a mushroom growth of English medium schools, and despite that, students are not able to understand or to speak in English, or they are more mediocre in the terms of language. They are not. You can say that they are a jack of all trades, and they cannot speak perfect Urdu or English or any language. They are not mastered in one art, you say. So I guess that makes any language supreme is about what knowledge is being produced in that language. So I guess that was the point I was about to add. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sana. So the question she is asking is that we have, actually the idea of classification is really elusive when it comes to the classification of schools in Pakistan. We have variety of schools. We have uh, private English medium schools that have very low fee. Now, well, do they really teach English? When they write, okay, the name of the school in their advertisement, when they write the name of the school and then they write English medium school, that's actually a tagline. They are trying to sell themselves. But do they really teach English in a way that helps students internalize this language? That is a big question. Yeah, that is a question we should actually look upon. Thank you. All right then. Thank you. Oh, Hafsa.
Thank you.
Hafsa.
Dr. Sabab, many congratulations for this wonderful project. And I wish you and your team very good luck for this very good. शायद लोग आपको कहीं अब कौन पढ़ता है अखबार, but I believe that this is an important task to do, and you are doing it. For my own quest, I have just 3 questions, very short. The first one is I want to know that are you going to make some binaries while you are going to study in your textual analysis in Urdu and English newspaper? Would you go to see that how they are developing different binaries, which is actually affecting those socio-political perceptions and making the frames of public? And then second is, are you going to see this from the lens of Orientalism? And the third and last one is, you have talked about that you are going to take focus group. So is this focus group is with the reporters, or are you going to have some in-depth interviews with the editors of English newspapers and Urdu newspapers to know that how do they work, what are their challenges, as Mozim has pointed out? Thank you.
Well, thank you, Hafsa. About the methodology question, especially your that who is going to be the part of focus group discussions, I think the second stage of my research will inform us that who may be the good options for focus group discussions. Our interviews will help us identify participants for the focus group discussion. And for your another question, which was about Orientalism, no, I actually didn't think about it that way. In this project, I am only going to discuss the idea of a transformation of linguistic apartheid into information apartheid. So yeah, I think I'll only focus on that part. Well, thank you very much for all of your suggestions and comments. It was lovely learning from you all, and your suggestions were helpful. Thank you so much.